Okay, hello. So we're gonna go over news. BBC News starting legal advisors help migrant spouses gay to get asylum in UK. Undercover BBC investigation finds. The BBC exposes a shadowy industry charging migrants thousands of pounds to help them cheat the asylum system. Starmer not going to yield to pressure from Trump on Iran war. It follows a warning from the US President that America's trade deal with the UK can always be changed. Iranian commander threatens shipping in Gulf and Red Sea if US naval blockade continues. The commander made the comments after the US military began a blockade of Iranian ships on Monday. Trump's rift with Pope is playing out in public. It's costing him valuable support. Leading conservative Catholics tell the BBC why they backed the American pontiff in his legal spat with Trump. Australia's richest person must share part of her mining fortunes, court rules. The long-running legal dispute is over a lucrative iron ore project in top of west corner of Australia. South Korea jails American YouTuber for public nuisance. Coffee. 250 missing after migrant boat sinks in Indian Ocean. Okay, in Finland, the hunting of white-cheek goose is gonna start maybe next autumn. White-cheek goose, I don't know what is the international name. There's a lot of them in Helsinki. The Central Criminal Investigation Bureau told that some of the drones found in Finland had explosives. The amount of explosives was smaller than previously thought. A school that had occurred in Vuoksenniskan koulu, where two pupils collided with each other and the other child died. The vote winner Magyar in Hungary wants to stop Hungary national public radios news. So he said he wants to assure press freedom. in Hungary. Artificial intelligence. Anthropic claims to have developed a too dangerous AI model. Leaders of government and banks are going to security meeting, fast security meeting. Energy. The new data centers in Finland need electricity of two power plants. Religion. Trump is risking conservative voters vote support with Pope whim. What is, batteries? What is a solid state battery? Why would it be better than the previous batteries? If the new solid state batteries are gotten to the market, well, you could go a lot further with one charge with a car than now. Yeah, about the donut lab. I haven't heard anything about donut lab recently. Helsingin Sanomat in Ottawa, Stubb, NATO is a defense alliance. It is not our duty to defend United States in an attack war. There's a suggestion that the Helsinki railway market in the center, they would assemble a city forest, build to help a forest in the Helsinki Rautatien Tori railway market. The empty space that's next to the railway station. uh, horse in Tallinn. Record amount of Russian agents were caught in Estonia. They have caught at least 8 agents during past year. Yeah, Yle News. There's a school shooting in Turkey. At least 4 dead. Financial Times. Iran used Chinese spy satellite in attack to United States headquarters in Middle East. Back to BBC News, Europe's news. Italy suspends defense agreement with Israel. The Italian Prime Minister said that the pact, which happens every 5 years, would be suspended in view of the current situation. In US, French woman 86 held by ICE after moving to US to reunite with long lost love. Spain approves plan to give around 500,000 undocumented migrants legal status. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said the migrants helped build the rich, open, and diverse Spain that we are and to which we aspire. Spanish Prime Minister's wife charged with corruption after 2-year probe. Begona Gomez is accused of using her relationship with Pedro Sanchez to advance her private career. Italian Prime Minister condemns ally Trump over unacceptable Pope criticism. Italy's Prime Minister and the US President are close allies, but Trump has refused to apologize to the very weak Pope Leo XEV. French cement giant guilty of financing militant groups, including Islamic State. The French company paid 6.5 million to jihadist groups to keep its plant running in war-torn Syria, Paris court heard. UK could adopt EU single market rules under new legislation. The move has raised questions over parliamentary scrutiny of future rules to deliver planned EU deals. Rare 150-year-old Greenland shark washes up in Ireland. The Greenland shark, which can have a lifespan of over 500 years, was discovered on the shores of Finiskin on Saturday. Ukraine's military to get the biggest ever shipment of UK drones. With attention on Middle East, Defense Secretary John Healey said Putin wants us to be distracted. Analyzes jubilation in Budapest will be felt in Europe, but leaves Moscow cold. European leaders share Hungarians' joy over the ousting of Vladimir Putin's EU ally, writes the BBC Europe editor. Iran war, Financial Times. Iran used Chinese spy satellite to coordinate strikes to United States military headquarters, military quarters. Maybe I read that already before. The Ukraine war, according to Yle. The hacker group attached to Russia broke into uh, officials, Ukrainian officials' emails. Britain thought of a new support package to Ukraine, at least 220,000 drone delivery this year. The Ukraine supporting countries again unite. NATO Rutte will meet Ukrainian, German, and British delegates. President Stubb and Foreign Minister Valtonen discussed on the phone with President Zelensky. Bit of pain worked long-term security from Iran, Beset tells BBC. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has told the BBC a small bit of economic pain is worth while for long-term international security. As the International Monetary Fund IMF warned, the US-Israel war with Iran could plunge the global economy into recession. Bassett said the conflict was to eliminate the threat of Iranian nuclear strikes on Western capitals. I wonder what the hit to global GDP would be if a nuclear weapon hit London. I'm saying that I am less concerned about short-term forecasts from long-term security. For long-term security, he said. As the start of war, Iran had uranium enriched to 60%, according to senior US officials. It doesn't have nuclear weapons. The UK government had said there is no assessment that Iran is trying to target Europe with missiles. Bassett told the BBC that he was less concerned about the economic hit than the risk of Iran posed to global security. The biggest risk you can take is the one you don't know you are taking. Now we know for a fact that as the Iranians shot at Diego Garcia, they do have mid-range international ballistic missiles that could reach London, and we know that they want a nuclear program, he said. He added that US and Israeli strikes had removed the tail risk of Iranian nuclear strikes against Western countries. As the BBC has previously reported, the threat of Iranian ballistic missiles to London is remote. The UK government spokesman said there is no assessment that Iran is trying to target Europe with missiles. But we have the military capability we need to keep Britain safe from any kind of attacks, whether it's on our soil or from abroad. We are ready to defend the country, whatever the threat. In its World Economic Outlook report, the IMF said in the worst case scenario, where oil, gas, and food prices spike and remain high this year and next, global growth could fall below 2% in 2026. This would mean a close call for a global recession, which has happened only 4 times since 1980. It said most recently during COVID pandemic. Energy prices have soared since the war began, now more than 6 weeks ago. After the key Strait of Hormuz shipping route effectively closed and peace talks between US and Iran failed, the IMF said once again the global economy is threatened with being thrown off course, this time by the outbreak of war in the Middle East at the end of February 2026. It said the most severe conditions that could lead to a worldwide slowdown would include oil prices reaching an average of $110 per barrel this year and hitting 125 in 2027. Based on these assumptions, the IMF said that the inflation could reach as much as 6% next year. This could force central banks to increase interest rates to slow the pace of price rises. IMF chief economist Pierre Olivier Gouring has told the BBC that a prolonged conflict would lead to spiraling inflation, push up unemployment, and lead to food insecurity in some countries. He warned that even if the conflict ended today, the impact on oil supply would be as big as the fallout from the 1970s oil crisis, when Arab oil producers placed an embargo on the US and other countries which backed Israel during the Yom Kippur War. But Gourin has said the world was now less dependent on oil and on fossil fuels, so the impact on consumers would be less severe. Oil has risen close to 120 during the Iran conflict, but has since fallen back, although it remains above pre-war levels. And on Tuesday, a barrel of crude cost 95. Moreover, the IMF pointed out that the risk of recession would increase only if severe conditions continued over 2 years. It said that the conflict was resolved in the next few weeks, and if energy production and exports from the Middle East begin to normalize by the middle of this year, global growth would ease to 3.1% for 2026. This is below an earlier forecast of 3.3. It also left prediction for global growth next year unchanged at 3.2%. Of world's advanced economies, the IMF has forecasted the UK will be hardest hit by energy shock from Iran war. It cut its estimate for UK growth this year to 0.8% from a previous prediction of 1.3. However, it expects the UK to then recover with economic expansion of 1.3%. All exporting nations in the Gulf are likely to see a sharp slowdown in economic growth or even a contradiction this year, according to IMF forecasts. It estimates that Iran's economy will shrink by 6.1% this year. However, forecasts rebound of 3.2% in 2027, providing the war ends in the next few weeks. This is far from certain. On Sunday, US President Donald Trump announced a US blockade of Iranian ports to stop exports. Some countries, such as Qatar, a major supplier of liquefied natural gas, LNG, have been targeted with missiles and drones by Iran. Qatar's Ras Laffan, the world's largest LNG refinery, has been struck and is not expected to be fully operational for some time. The IMF forecasts that Qatar economic will contract by 8.6% in 2026 before bouncing back with 8.5 growth next year. It also predicts that Iran's neighbor Iraq will take an economic hit this year from the war, with a slowdown of 6.8%, but is expected to recover to 11.3 growth in 2027. A country's economic resilience will depend on a number of factors, the IMF said, including the damage to energy infrastructure, dependence on the Strait of Hormuz, and availability of alternative export routes. Saudi Arabia, for example, has east-west pipeline which runs from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea and can pump up to 7 million barrels of oil per day. Saudi's growth will slow in 2026, but the economy is still expected to expand by 3.1% and is projected to grow by 4.5% next year. The IMF said most Middle East oil exporters are forecast for an upturn next year based on the assumption that energy production and transportation are normalized over the next few months. But it cautioned that this assumption may need to be revised if the duration of the conflict extends and the degree of damage suffered gets reassessed. The IMF also cut its expectations for China's economic growth this year, predicting it will grow by 4.4% in 2026, down from 4.5% increase in the forecasted in January. Its projection that China's economy will grow by 4.4% 2027 was unchanged. One country that has benefited from the surge in oil prices is Russia, according to the IMF forecast. The Russian economy is expected to grow by 1.1% this year and next ahead of previous predictions of 0.8% and 1% respectively. Russia has been hit by a series of sanctions after it launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 4 years ago. In March, Trump removed restrictions on exports of Russian oil as global prices soared. He also temporarily lifted sanctions of 140 million barrels of Iranian oil for 30 days. European Commissioner for Finance warned against the country's easing sanctions against Russia, arguing the country was emerging as a winner from this war. Energy prices are up, and that gives additional revenues for Russia's war machine. Valdis Dombrovskis told an event on the sidelines of the IMF summit in Washington. Now is not the time to ease the pressure on Russia. Okay, there it ended. Okay, maybe I will end this here. End this stream.